Hello, everyone, and how you doing? Welcome to the second episode of the Flanderization Files. I recommend tonight during our show to grab yourself a slice of pizza and beer and settle down in your leather Barca lounger. No, we are not the cast of Baywatch or Days of Our Lives, unfortunately, despite what Paul Rudd says. Instead, we are outsiders looking for our big break and finding the audition that seals the deal. We hope you don't find us wallowing in the desert or leaving in a spaceship. Instead, we invite you to our proactive conversation, a harrowing journey, really, on the Flanderization of Joey Tribbiani. Please don't kick us off of the George Washington Bridge or cheat on us in the back of the Mattress King for our commentary tonight. For good or for bad, just remember, in the end of all of this, we still love Rachel.
I'll be there for you when the rain starts to fall.
Woo! Splash a fountain in my face.
We gotta see how many times you can get the sound of the clap into this episode.
I think every time we agree with somebody's point, even mildly, just a little.
I'm here for that.
I feel like that's copyrighted, though, too. Everything.
We
sound
can
clip.
do our own. I mean, it's copyrighted if you use the clap, but if we went.
That'd be the
Tyler copyrighted the clap after a heated class action lawsuit.
All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Flanderization Files. My name is Dakotah, and these are three lovely gentlemen here. Go ahead and introduce yourself, fellas.
My name is Ben.
My name is Tyler.
I'm so sorry. And my name is Will, also known as Will Advised on YouTube. I'll do it for myself.
All right, so let's get into the conversation of Joey Tribbiani, and maybe just kind of as a warm-up before we go on here, we could talk about our experience with the show Friends, which ran from 1994 to 2004. I'll go really quickly, just explaining my experience with it. I've probably watched this show many, many times. I started watching it when I guess it was around the 8th or 9th season that I started watching it, and then just kind of nonstop watching DVDs. I really enjoy it, even though it's very problematic, and Joey ends up being really problematic, and we'll make the case for his Flanderization. But yeah, Tyler, do you have what's your experience with the show?
So I love the Friends. I really do. Okay, don't get me wrong. It's good. It's a great show to get into. But I was always in the How I Met Your Mother scene. So there was that big feud between one or the other, and I liked How I Met Your Mother just a little bit more. So I almost took it as a little rivalry to purposely not watch Friends, and I didn't like it. And then also going to the 90s, I'd rather just watch The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So
Good call, Sally.
but no, after we were watching the show, I'm gonna admit, I got into it a little bit. I liked it. It was definitely a college show for me, and it's getting back into it. So, thank you for this recommendation. Even though I'm really gonna be honest, I was hoping we'd do this 10 times, a few episodes down the road, maybe 2 years from now, and not straight out episode number 2. So, thank you.
I love that it took a podcast for Tyler to be like, we're really getting into Friends lately. You guys heard of this? This is also the same man who texted me a month before we started this podcast and just said, hey, I've been getting really into this new show that I think you're going to love. Have you heard of it? It's called Psych. Mind you, in college,
I think they're going to go somewhere. They're on to something, too.
I think they're going to air 7, 8 seasons from 2006 to probably 2013. Probably call it a day from there. Maybe do some movies. I don't know. I'm only talking about a fucking almost 20-year-old show that I think I introduced you to back in college. So just
look, if anyone can do it, USA Network can.
Characters welcome, always. And speaking of, I guess I'll talk about Friends. I watched it a little bit as it was finishing up its run. My mom watched it So I would like watch it with her sometimes. She even watched Joey, which I'm sure we'll get into towards the end today. But as far as the episodes you picked as we're talking about Joey, I thought they were interesting because I watched the series all the way through in high school, started in syndication. Then my brother got me the box set for Christmas one year, watched the whole thing, really loved it despite some stuff that, yeah, it's not great. It's not breaking down any barriers or anything, but I enjoy it for what it is. But these episodes, especially the first couple, even back in season one, you can see the tracks for multiple characters and like the trajectory they're eventually going to go down, which speaks both to the strength of the sitcom writing, even at the start, but also how easy it is for them to fall into a lot of those traps and so quickly at that, as again, I'm sure we'll be talking about. So that's most of my experience with Friends. Ben, what about you?
Yeah. So, for me, I was doing pretty well pre Y2K, and
What a sweet setup.
No, I watched Friends. So my sister is really into Friends, so I didn't ever watch it on my own. Really, she kind of comes back and watches the whole show like kind of once a year. So I have definitely watched through most of the show with her, but like never like front to back and not super sequential. Like I'd like watch like 7 episodes in a night with her, and then like we wouldn't watch it for a while, and then we'd come back and watch it again. So it was like I never like got a good idea of like the character development, whatever that is. But I always enjoyed watching it with her. And then I came back a little bit on my own and watched it during COVID. I went through, as I think many people do, like an Always Sunny kick, and like came across one of those interviews where they were talking about like they wanted to do like de-beautification of the characters throughout the show because like, and they pointed out like Friends, like how they throughout the show, like all the actors, because they're trying to get other roles outside of Friends and stuff, like keep like getting better looking because they're like are getting more fit or like have nutritionists. They're like getting richer as they go. And I like came back to that just because I was like, oh yeah, like I've never really thought about that and like watched that. So I came back for that reason. But again, like haven't just watched the show for the pure enjoyment of the show apart from just like enjoying it with my sister. Yeah.
And really quick sidebar before we get started. I'm really glad that you shared that specifically because this is 100% true. For the last like 3 days, we've been good friends for like 7 or 8 years. I've been wondering if I was making up the fact that you had an older sister. Like just in the last 72 hours, I was like, is Ben an only? I feel like you have like a significantly older sister. Where like I have enough friends in my life where I like that I truly couldn't remember if I was making that up about you because you just strike me as one of those guys, and I don't know what that means.
As a younger brother?
Yeah, or just like somebody with like a disconnected older sister. Is that is she like 6 years or somewhere in that neighborhood?
She's 4 years older than me. Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, it's far enough.
That's wonderful now that we learned about Ben's older sister. And then we're going to brush on to maybe a case of why I think Joey is absolutely Flanderized from this series. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and because I made a little PowerPoint.
If you're listening, imagine.
Oh my gosh!
This is basically called "What Is a Joey?" By myself, Sally. So yeah, we'll go along here.
Baby kangaroo.
Overall, on the surface of Joey, what he appears to be starting out in the beginning of the series, he's supposed to be an aspiring actor, a ladies' man, and a good and loyal friend. But that is far, far, far from the truth.
Is he running for office?
The absolute real truth is... Oh, sorry. Sorry, guys. Sorry. We're good. Okay. Now
this is Joey Tribbiani's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
I was wondering what this color background was representing, and then you just totally hit it on the nail. So the really real truth is David Crane and Martha Kaufman had no idea what to do with him and ignorantly sent Joey to a hole of Flanderization. And one man was sent to find him. Me. And after 3 days of research, I have created a roadmap to share amongst the four of us that will shape our conversation of Joey's ultimate Flanderization. And now I present to you the Joey Catacombs.
Oh my
Ooh,
god.
let me zoom in.
What is this?
Can you guys see this okay?
Is this a Lana Del Rey album cover?
I know that Will said shoots and ladders before we started recording, but did you have to do literal shoots and ladders?
This is
I was
Lana
thinking-
Del Rey's Joey fucking Tribbiani.
I was thinking finding those construction ladders when you're going down the catacombs. I don't know if that's just me.
Oh, all those times I've been in the catacombs.
This belongs in a magazine that I only ever will read in my doctor's office waiting room. You're going to have to read these to me, Sally. I'm sorry. These are my cheaters, and I can't.
So on the top screen here, we have the aspiring actor, which I mentioned before. So basically, Joey, in the aspiring actor catacomb, he takes on many pathetic and minuscule roles for the sake of humor, and then very below that, he ridicules others for wanting to be in his profession. And then another kind of like branch to that is potential big roles always turn to big failures, and then branch it down, selfishly uses his talent for personal gain rather than growth. And then at the very bottom of the catacomb, sabotages others to get ahead in his career. Now, here's a bridge here, as you can see. We will get to that. But we're going to go up to the a ladies' man section, and basically, he misconstrues his entire life as a romantic comedy. Then he has genuine potential for a love interest that always fails in the show. And then on that bridge here that we see, he uses his career to take advantage of women. And then on the very bottom, wants women simply for their bodies and nothing more. And then a good-hearted friend that he is. So on the bridge here, we see that he is in love with Rachel. He claims he is in love with Rachel, in which a long-winded plot turns into a complete pit of despair. And then going to the other branch of the good-hearted friend, he resorts to being the trauma dumpster of the group with nothing in return. There's no fulfillment on meaningful promises that he makes. He abandons and kicks his friends out for giving genuine advice. And then at the very bottom, he uses his stupidity as an excuse and his kindness as a barrier for bad behavior. And that's the catacombs there for you.
Okay, just real quick before we move on. I'm going to roll this. It's a D20. Just want to see real quick. All right, that is a 14. Can I cross any of those bridges?
No, you can't.
Okay, but I was close, right?
Very close, maybe a 16. So those are the Joey catacombs right there. And then we're just going to go on to, sorry guys, there was too many episodes that I just had to narrow down to 6 because I felt like that one of them was very crucial, and that was kind of like the ladder. But we're going to go on to the very first episode, which is season 1, episode 6. And this is the one with Joey's butt double. So I guess quick reason why I chose this was just because we're finally seeing the start of the Flanderization here already, as it's repeated multiple times of Joey's acting career, always using the bit of him going to silly acting gigs and auditions and never really getting anything in return, and that kind of builds up to having no point of return for all the roles that he gets. So I'm going to throw it over to Will. Will, what did you think about this episode?
I think that's a great description and analysis overall. My one note, you're too clenched. You're too clenched. Can we get a guy who's a little less clenched? You're making a lot of decisions as an actor. I really like this one. I think it's a real experience as somebody. We've all been in shows, both we've been in them and we've been audience members of Friends in good and bad shows. And we've had to do that dance of like finding the nice things to say without just shitting on it, unless they're a good enough friend that you can shit on it a little bit. Like we kind of saw with Chandler, he has that relationship to Joey. It's established even as early as episode 6 that they already have that rapport. That's kind of nice. I like that. As far as his journey, I think he kind of goes on a bit of shoots and ladders, if you will, of legitimacy as an actor, both in how seriously he takes himself and how seriously he's taken. I think there are just a lot of peaks and valleys throughout the show, so I think this is a really good starting point for that. Outside of that, I don't have too much to say. I think it was fun. I think it was a good B-plot. And, there were a lot of butt crack jokes, like Sally said. Butt crack jokes in the 90s were like crack in the 80s jokes. They were just everywhere for good reason.
It was a big problem.
Is that a big butts joke?
And you cannot lie. Okay, you didn't lie. But that's mostly what I thought. I thought it was a good runner or a B-plot. You can see that Joey will be able to carry his own storylines as more of a focal point in some of these other episodes. But for what it was and how early it was, I thought it was a good starting point for Joey and also Monica. I think there was a lot to her tendencies that really get exploited in later seasons that are so so on the nose so early in a way that really surprised me, because those quirks usually they'll ramp up in the mid to late point of the series, and it's like, okay, you're a little too specific about this one thing now, hence this entire series. But with her, they just they started her at a fucking 10 with her. I don't want to generalize and say OCD. I don't like using that as a descriptor, but her very particular organization. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm going to give it to Tyler.
Okay, so yeah, I liked the episode. I thought it was good. I thought I see where you were going with, especially for the beginning of the first episode or the first season, because it was episode 6. So it was very early on into the whole series in general. So I think this is the start of, because this is before he gets the doctor role, if I'm correct. So this is really the start of where they realize they can start playing with his acting and his career and basically turn into whatever direction that they want to, and then we just kind of follow it. And you really do see that throughout the whole series, that's exactly what happens too. Like you're saying, it's very loose. There's no actual pattern of, I feel no arc of growth as an actor as well too. Some days he's the best actor ever with some of the best actors, and the next thing you know, he's I don't even know how to do this one role. You know what I mean? So it's very sometimes he's in plays, sometimes he's movies, and I think it's realistic in some points, but I also do think that it's just a little all over the place, and you can kind of see in the beginning.
Yeah,
this is a good standpoint for that.
There's
trying to bring as your arc.
Yeah, there's also plenty of times where I feel like Joey always has that opportunity where this episode wasn't mentioned, but the one where he works with Susan Sarandon, it's
yes.
It's really kind of awkward and cringe. I feel like it's because it's he's working with better actors, and even with somebody like Kate from season 3. I think that even if Joey is following along with their moves and acting with them, I don't really think he's learning much from them as an actor.
That's what's great about his character and just the career he has chosen to as a character, because you can have a lot of fun with that. But it really did start to make it the butt of the joke. No offense, but
and sometimes they also found an out where it wasn't always a dig at his intelligence, but they still made him the buffoon in the acting specific scenarios. I'm thinking of, speaking of legitimate actors, when he has the opportunity to work with Charlton Heston, and his whole thing in that episode is that, Joey stinks. How is he going to sneak past Charlton Heston when he smells like rotten eggs? And that's the whole thing, is it's not based in his... I mean, there are stupid moves he pulls throughout, and probably, I haven't seen it in years, probably the circumstances to which he just starts to smell like a garbage truck, or any other Mr. Grinch-like descriptors. Whatever it was less about the idiocy of the character and more about the circumstances surrounding him. So they did have a lot of interesting moves with him as an actor. So Tyler's right on the money with that.
I will say this too. I was gonna say this later on, but might as well just get it right out of the gate too. As the seasons go on, like I really, it's weird because in the beginning he's not that big in the role. You know what I mean? Like his character is not on stage all that much. He really is plays as a secondary character, and was really built for the laughs. In that episode, like the one that we just were talking about right now, the butt one, like season 1, episode 6, right out the gate, it really is trying to tell you this is a secondary character, and he's not really going to have much growth or go any further. No, he
Yeah.
does in some parts, but I think the only time he really does grow on the screen is when they really need someone to make the butt of the joke, to be the buffoon.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning of that episode, with the being the main character of Freud, is really kind of setting the scene already. I feel like for Joey, he's already got a main role and he doesn't deliver.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I thought this was a really good starting point, mostly because I agree with what everybody has said so far. That like he starts off already kind of like a shell of a person. Like he's not really a real person, because he is like the butt of the joke.
Yeah,
But
lay into him.
I hate you. Yeah, spank him around a little bit. But so I think that what I think this was a really good episode to show like what they could have done with him and decided not to do with him. Because like I found that throughout this episode, like you get an idea that he actually like has goals and has ambitions for his life and like wants to do something bigger. But I think throughout the rest of the show, they don't like showcase that at all. He just like he just be like he gets the bad job. He's like, oh well, it's a bad job, but I need the money,
Hey, that's
and
my
then it
dumb
just
guy
goes on.
voice.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
I'm actually happy you really said that because I was just about to say that too. Is like if you like in this at least like yeah he's an idiot in the episode, but at least he's an idiot that has aspirations and dreams and like he wants to hit a goal. So he's trying to do like yeah he's the butt of the joke and he's the butt and he's doing stupid things with his butt, but he's genuinely trying to be the best actor that he can be.
He
You
was like,
know?
he's being artistic and like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like he's being genuine, a human being. And then I feel like in the later episodes and later seasons, it really is. He's just Joey. You know, oh, that's gonna make a mistake and fuck up no matter what. And it almost seemed like he would try sometimes, but then in the end, he would even say like, "I don't care anyway. I'm just gonna Joey it up," you know. And then eventually, he Joeyed it up anyway, and it would. But then it would work out in his favor, of course.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind as we kind of really look at how all over the place it is as stakes for the character is this is the first show we're covering from the 90s where it wasn't built with anything streaming or I guess syndication was on the table absolutely, but the want to even slightly serialize other than relationship based arcs wasn't necessarily on the table as much like there was always going to be potential for it, but it was never the end goal to have long term growth for the characters because, you know, they really need to rinse and repeat. So I'm trying to kind of grade on that curve and not hold too much against them. And like I said, I really am impressed at like how much groundwork they laid for a lot of these characters so early. Even Chandler in this episode with like him having the commitment issues that he still has in season 2 and they in season 3, but here even having him want more is an interesting step that they kind of pull back on because it serves the purpose better to again rinse and repeat with that storyline because they really hit gold with what Matthew Perry was doing with that. But I love that his character had that moment in this episode.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a good point. Like the rinse and repeat point. I think like to that, it's like if they had continued rinse and repeating with Joey at this level, where like he, you know, is the he's always trying and always failing, and he has like a good heart about it, and he has like a reason behind why he's doing the role. I think that could have like been something that they continued to ring on, and it wouldn't have been necessarily Flanderization. It would have just been okay, the same joke every time. But like as we get into the later episodes in the show, it's like they pull away from that as like the trope and just move toward him being like a total idiot that has no goals, no ambitions. He's not trying anymore. And I think that kind of makes it so that he like that's where the Flanderization comes in, not so much an actual character because his character in many other characters don't change a whole lot.
So great points on season 1, episode 6. So we're going to move on to the second episode, which is season 2, episode 9, the one where Eddie won't go. I think that the reason I chose this episode specifically is that there could be a really great moment happening with Joey and Chandler at the end here, but the way I kind of read it in my mind as I'm looking at Flanderization for Joey is that he's basically doing a very hard reset into his character, going back to Chandler's apartment, not really gaining much from his acting career. It's a happy moment because they're together again, but it would have been nice to see Joey kind of grow into having his own apartment. I felt so. Yeah. Any thoughts? I am going to shoot this over to Ben. Ben, what did you think about this episode?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, probably one of the more classic episodes of Friends. Like, if I think about an episode that everybody knows, at least that final scene where they bring the dog in, like, pretty great. And then, like, that continues to come out throughout the rest of the show. It's fun. But I think where this, like, I agree with you a lot, Dakotah, that, like, it kind of becomes this reset for him. But I, like, when I'm thinking about Flanderization versus what they could have done to avoid Flanderization of him, I love that like plot line of where like Gunther's a former soap opera actor himself, and like you know if they really wanted to go with like making like improving his character and like avoiding going into a trope, like oh okay he learns maybe I'll go I'll go to acting school, and then we get like a season where he's in acting school and you meet new people and he's like becomes a better actor for it, and tries to get out of like the hole he's in. But to your point, like he digs himself deeper into the catacomb of his own life and like becomes a shell where he is reliant on Chandler to kind of survive, which is a trope that goes on further in the show where like he has to have Chandler around in order to be able to like be okay.
I love this episode. Ben's right. It's a classic. I love that I fast forward through a lot of these just to watch the Joey plots because I don't care to revisit every single plot line in these 6 episodes. But my God, shout out to Adam Goldberg as Eddie. That dude is so funny. That's such a great plot line he has with Matthew Perry. It's great. It's a great conclusion to it. It's the brand names of the I Love Lucite and all of those are so much fun. They remind me of like The Good Place where they listed like the fake businesses and all the different pun type things. And if we're talking classic sitcom things, maybe it's because they had all the clip shows where they used this, but not just the dog being wheeled into the apartment. Also, Joey looking longingly out the fake rain window thing that kills me every single time. Like that's such a funny literal set piece. I love it. This is one of my probably in my top 10 favorite episodes of the series, and season 2 and 3 I think are loaded with great episodes, and this is probably top 5 if not top 3 of season 2.
Yeah, no, I think the only great thing about this was like the ending. It really does add that, because we're skipping through all these episodes too. We're also getting into the plots and the storylines of what was going on. So like, I understand this was the point where like Joey and Chandler were no longer together as roommates because there was a feud, I believe. So to have him back, that was pretty a nice touching moment. I guess that's all I'm going to add to that. Good work there.
I will say that in terms of Joey's growth on wherever that is, him and Chandler is more of the strongest point of Joey. I feel like it's not the strongest thing in the whole series, but the way they kind of end off is very sweet. And especially if you guys have seen the final episode, they play that final game of foosball, and it's wonderful to watch them both because you could tell as actors that they are ready to cry, and it's enjoyable. So yeah, let's move on to season 3, episode 22, the one with the screamer. I kind of chose this episode because I feel like I I I really adore the Joey and Kate stuff, the way that it builds up in the beginning, like their tension, their feud as being actors, I thought was very strong, if not the strongest potential love story that Joey could have. But then it completely sells out Joey again at the ending when all of a sudden Kate's just going to leave and left out of nowhere, and we kind of punch Joey again by him being on stage and then all of a sudden leaving in the spaceship, and it it's honestly kind of tragic to me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I again think this is a classic episode of the series for me. I'll leave the Ben Stiller stuff out of it. I didn't really love him as a guest star on this. I think it's funny maybe one time, and then any time after that is kind of grating. But with Joey,
That's just my general opinion of Ben Stiller, personally. But
yeah, my one exception, because I think everybody has one for something like this, is Dodgeball. I've seen Dodgeball like 40 times, and I'm like,
great.
it's incredible. I watched it a couple months ago. I'm like, this is still great.
It's funny because if it's his own work, you're like, oh, cool, Ben Stiller. But if he shows up in a show, you're like, oh, it's a Ben Stiller cameo.
It's the reverse. It's the reverse Big Sean, where like the guest appearances are great, and then the main stuff is like, oh no, Ben Stiller. They'll all watch his main stuff. It's just when he shows up in other things, I'm like, oh, this is going to be lackluster. I'm sorry, Big Sean, and anybody else in Michigan who's watching. But to go back to what we were talking about with Joey and Kate, I think Ben and Tyler both have mentioned different points of just trying to figure out like things they avoided when it came to Flanderizing this, things that could have happened, things that didn't happen. And I just loved this. Like Dakotah said, all the build up to it was great. The fact that she's the first one to really like meet him at his level, call him on his shit. Like, of course, a character like this is going to have somebody going toe to toe with them eventually. And for the betterment of the series is likely not going to last. So I think they played it just about as well as they could with the length of time. I think you're right that it's kind of tragic the way it ended between them and the end of the play, which is, again, just a phenomenal rug pull because at no point in any of this Joey getting his shit together and taking himself seriously arc is it ever hinted at what this play is about, anything other than it might be bad and here's a couple sides from it. So the surprise reveal of that as this chapter comes to a close for him, it is so bittersweet because it's like, oh, this was all for nothing. It's like we were all in an improv group together. Spoilers for why this sucks. And we know what it's like to like have a scene with real stakes and like it feels like something. And then you throw a premise in that heightens everything. And yeah, it's funny, but like the potential of what was there is now gone. And it kind of makes it look silly by comparison. And that's exactly what they did here to, I think, incredible comedic and even dramatic narrative effect. I'm blown away by it every time I think about it, every time I watch it. Again, top 10 episode of the series for me, Ben Stiller notwithstanding.
So they did a decent job already, like Dakotah was saying, playing at the same level of Joey and then correcting him and saying, get your shit together. And then at the end of the episode, it all just stops anyway, right? And so it's like all that work, all that build up for that growth just tossed away. And then you never see it for the rest of like the series or like at least like that's a changing moment in Joey where he's a completely different actor for the rest of the series. It has no effect whatsoever. In that moment, yes, but in the longevity of anything else afterwards, no. It's basically like, oh, credits, and then it starts all over like, what's Joey gonna do today? You know, and I get it. These sitcom shows kind of do that, but like if the Ross and Rachel thing can have such a long-lasting effect over the whole frickin' series, then why can't one couple of those interactions with the greatest actors in the world make Joey so slowly turn into a better actor as well? You know what I mean? And so like there's a lot of those moments that they just weren't hitting. You could still make the jokes and everything about being a butt actor, but at least like keep the growth there too, and I felt like they just decided not to do that part.
That's a great point you made, Tyler, about how it never comes back into the latter half of the series. A lot of these plot lines, there's only one specific episode I'm thinking of, but when he has the interview with the, I think it's like a newspaper person, somebody who's
Yeah.
writing for Soap Opera Digest.
Tom Selleck's character got more callbacks throughout the whole series than like any of like the side characters in Joey's life. So that's what blew me away too, was like it just felt like anything that had to do with Joey and his character had like they didn't really care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we're gonna throw it into the show just to split off from the rest of the other segments. But like they really didn't hold it to its own strength that it could have been either.
I feel like, with the exception of Chandler's late in life career change, the only character who really gets respectful treatment throughout like that is Rachel, where they show her trajectory from the waitress to the personal shopper to like working at Ralph Lauren, all this different stuff. And with Monica, there's a bit of it as she's trying to find her identity as a chef in the first few seasons, but not too much, again, outside of her relationship to Chandler and what that job change means as he goes to Tulsa. But Phoebe and Ross, they go through different changes, but I don't really think of too much. Like Ross becomes, I think, like a professor and dates one of his students. I remember that being a thing.
His biggest changes was like family, like having a bunch of kids and like
Right,
having baggage.
Right,
That
but
was his
career-wise, they did focus on him. But again, like B things, going from paleontologist to professor of paleontology, and then to whatever he was doing by the end with the different conferences. So they all kind of get segmented. But Joey's, like everybody else, there is growth. And I think that is maybe supposed to be just a commentary on Hollywood or show business, I guess, because they're in New York. But just the fact that everybody else, despite how background it is, there is a linear trajectory. And Joey, it's like a constellation where you're just trying to map those dots out a little more coherently. And it's hard to do. But as we've talked about extensively by now, he is there as the buffoon, the butt of the joke. And if anybody is going to be purely expendable for plot purposes, for the sake of a good joke, it's going to be Joey.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, and like going to your like catacombs map, where he's slowly going down the like he basically just uses women and no longer like really cares for the people he's dating or whatever throughout the show. I think this is kind of like he has some more here and there moments where he gets close to like being able to hold a relationship and like get close with somebody, but I feel like this episode like exemplifies why he is like as a character incapable of that. Essentially is like like he has this great opportunity and it's like no matter what we're always going to make sure he doesn't ever grow in that way because we like to come back and play on this. And so I think where Tao and I have been talking about like what could they have done differently, like they could have like had a couple episode arc where he finds himself and like is then able to like hold somebody down, but it'd be kind of funny to see like Joey navigate a long-term relationship, like setting ground rules in the house and shit. Like that could have been something funny where he's still the goofy idiot, but he like is starting to learn and become like an adult. And so it's just like there's so many things they could have done, and by not choosing to do them, they just like allow his character to just ramp downhill.
And then going back to the catacombs, where I basically made the point of he misconstrues his life as a romantic comedy. I think it was just that one thing where Joey goes to Monica's apartment in the morning. She kind of eggs him on, talking about that he had the night, but I don't know if that's exactly a genuine way to build this relationship up. Like, oh, you fall in love for one night. I don't know. I just didn't really find it genuine. So yeah, did anybody have any other points before we go on to the next episode?
Well, if it is, falling in love in one night, if any of these characters, much like being the butt of the joke, if any of them are going to embody a John Mayer song, it's going to be Joey.
That's true.
Give it one night.
Or, I mean, I guess it could be Ross because he ends up dating one of his students.
Hey, your body is a wonderland. That's my Ross. Gulp.
And with that, I'm going to say
All right. Next episode, season 5, episode 22. This episode is called "The One with Joey's Big Break." Um, so I think this is kind of like a repeated, more of like season 1, episode 6 with the butt double. We finally get to see Joey do something a lot more bigger. Like he's going out of town to shoot this big movie. He's going to be a main role. Then a lot of things just start twisting and turning for him, and it ultimately gets tragic again for his acting career. Once everybody is gone, they don't have any money anymore, and he abandons his friends. He abandons Chandler in the middle of it because he just didn't feel like that. Well, Chandler just didn't. He didn't feel like Chandler was correct in what he was saying, but he should have really listened to Chandler and should have took his advice seriously, which is kind of the good and loyal friend thing. Like I don't really think Joey handles or takes that advice very well. So I'm gonna toss it off to Ben. Ben, what did you think about this episode?
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting choice because I think I found in this episode for me that I just I just didn't like Joey in this episode. Um and I think that was kind of an interesting thing where he makes a lot of mistakes and like he becomes like I get where they were going with the jokes, but I don't know. I struggled to laugh because I just felt like his character lost a lot of his charm to me. Where like he starts to just like he kind of becomes like vindictive in a way. And so like that I hadn't really thought about that ever before throughout the show. Where he just has those moments, and it kind of reminds me of our conversation about like Barney, where like he used to be like somebody that it's like, oh yeah, I can imagine myself being friends with that guy. Like we all have that one friend who's a bit of an ass, but then like this time it's like I would I don't know if I'd be friends with him. So yeah, it kind of made it so that it went a little too far. Like he went way past like to me what his character like the confines of what his character should have been if they didn't want to go like kind of the Flanderization route.
I'd like to speak on that. I agree, and I also just want to expand the horizons a little bit, both what the episode after this is, but more importantly to Ben's point, where all the characters are at right now, because I think everybody just kind of sucks in the Friends universe by the end of season 5, because Chandler and Monica, their relationship has changed both of their dynamics. Ross and Rachel are about to be a mess again and get drunk and married in Vegas in the season 6 premiere. But the runner in these episodes right now, there's a whole thing with Phoebe and Ross where she's just furious at him for some unknown reason throughout the entire episode, and then it turns out it's because it was all about a dream. And that's it. So you're entirely correct that Joey kind of sucks, and like I understand what they were trying to do with his pride and his ego coming first, but you're right. They dialed it up too much, and Matt LeBlanc I think played it pretty honestly because it is a grounded plot line. And I think again it just speaks to their commentary on show business that nothing is guaranteed, and here's another pitfall. But then they can't give him something good and meaty like this without immediately undercutting it. So the season six, right? That premiere in Vegas has maybe one of the most criticized Joey plot points in the entire series outside of his relationship to Rachel, or with Rachel rather. And that's where they find him in Vegas, and he is a hand double, or trying to be a hand double for Thomas Lennon at a casino table because he thinks that A, their hands look identical, and that B, that is worth something. It's just so fucking stupid. I never thought it was funny to begin with, but again, this was something kind of grounded that Matt LeBlanc got to be a little dramatic with, even if, to Ben's point, it was too much for what really the levity of the show was calling for at that time. But then, yeah, nothing serious after that. They had to immediately cut him off at the legs and give him, or at the hands rather, for that stupid fucking plot. I don't know. Tyler, what did you think?
Yeah, so every time we get to the Las Vegas episode, actually, this is where I really start to teeter-totter out of the series. and I don't watch the most like because at that point I'm starting to realize it's running out of magic. You know what I mean? And it's because all of them already at this point are Flanderized, and then now it's getting progressively worse, and then we're hitting that arc, right? Um, so there's a lot with this episode. This is I'm really happy you chose this episode. I'm also surprised you didn't choose the episode after this because like that's another great moment of just like what you're talking about of his career, just like you know what I mean, like that Flanderization. There's a lot of Flanderizations in this episode. There's the Flanderization of his career, and you know, again, and it's that whole he's the butt of the joke. That's the schematic of the Joey character, right? So something incredible you never thought that was going to happen finally got offered and dropped on his footsteps. He does everything that he can to make sure that he can get it right. He fumbles halfway through, but then picks it back up, and then in the end, it's Joey, and so and it's similar to the episode that we were just talking about with the play. You know what I mean? So finally at the end, he's got this big lead. He's confident in himself. He does some shitty things, gets all the way to the end, and then boom. Oh, sorry, kid, you got Joey'd. You know what I mean? Bad luck, and then he's stranded out there.
I want to push back on that a little bit because I think you're giving two different examples. I think the play is a really good example of that, but with this, I don't think it is him doing everything right. I don't think it is him like taking all the right steps. I think to Ben's point, he's an asshole, and yeah, he's the butt of the joke, but it's in the karmic
I was
sense,
gonna get there
you know?
too.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
Not that he did everything right in this episode. He did it, but you know what I mean. Like he's still kind of like pushed on to go pursue this area.
Right. I just think
if wrong fashions though.
In the world where he was
where
nice and did everything right, I imagine like if they still went that route and still were like, all right, great, you were a good friend to everybody, fuck you, there's still no movie. That's where I'd be like really frustrated with the series. But as much as I didn't like Joey as a character in this, I understand the contrast needed to get to that point. Sorry, continue.
No, you're perfectly fine. I was going to say this is a Flanderization of his character as well and his morals, because this is when we start to see. Thank you. This is when we really start to see Joey no longer be like Joey, the aspiring actor that's the goofball that makes mistakes, but this is now Joey, the annoying you can't stand, constantly screaming, yelling, like he acts like a child, he acts out. This is a completely different Joey. So like this Joey is like just again basically exaggerated to the point where he is leaving his friends on the bridge side, and he's doing all the craziest, the rudest, the meanest things that you really wouldn't want this as your friend. And it's all because like now he's just going to the extreme every single time, and every episode after this really does kind of hit that. And instead of just saying like I was wrong, I'm sorry, he does that whole Vegas frickin' scene, and like that it's in itself is a you know what I mean. So. This is where they really start to see it goes downhill for the character and his morals.
Yeah, I think the dynamite is already set when he took the role, and he was dependent on the box office sales to make that for an independent film. We're talking like A24 film basically for him, and that already just sets off the dynamite. Like you are a New York actor and you're going to go all the way to Vegas, which is a very long distance away. How are you going to afford that? And how are you going to depend on the box office sales to make that money? You have to get a contract, dude. I don't know. I just thought that they just started off the idiocy right away, and then it just progressively got worse in this episode.
And if they wanted to make fun of that career and that choice and that whole little plot area, perfect. That's fine. But it's how they then belittled the character growth that they already had from him and just made him a jerk. That was the unnecessary part. That is the Flanderization line, I want to say. Boom, editing right there, stamp that, approved. Flanderization line. He has broken the barrier into Flanderization territory. You're welcome.
Mr. Awesome. President, the Tribbiani is growing a mustache.
So I'm so sorry, guys. I'm
so sorry because we have to talk about Tyler's hat now. What the fuck just happened? I understand I wasn't spinning gold or anything here, but
it's It's kind of like that episode in Friends where Joey just decides he wants to take a role as a 19-year-old, and then he's like sagging his pants, and then
Oh yeah, season 8, episode whatever, the one with the dumb fucking hat.
yep. um, I am so sorry, guys, because I feel like I skipped an episode actually. So, do you, do you mind if we kind of go back to that, or should we
Yeah,
just?
let's head back.
Do it.
Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll vote abstain if not negative for the one fact. Do you think that the episode we skipped serves a narrative outside of what we already covered in the other episodes?
that's a good point. I think that the episode that I chose was just simply like him using his acting career as like a way of sabotage, basically, to because of the way he basically tells his student to go audition and then play him as gay as a way for Joey to gain the role. I
Mm.
think that's wildly important, but we can definitely skip it because we've already kind of really talked about his acting career, and the next episode really focuses more on trying to be the good and loyal friend that he is. Um, so we could probably skip that most
Or
likely.
even just do a brief touch point on it without giving the episode description. I think broad strokes, yeah, super exploitative of him as the professor because it's funny they have the line at the beginning about, oh, but that you mean that means you can't sleep with your students, right? And he's like, yeah, I knew that. And I think it's Ross that says that, and then Ross bangs one of his students. Crazy.
Yeah,
The
Yeah.
other thing is, yeah, he broad misuse of his power, misuse of his power to meet broads more like, I don't really have anything to say outside of that fucking gem I just gave you guys.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, we can end this whenever. Uh, much like Joey in the Vegas episode, kill me now. Um, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think it serves much for a purpose. I think for your catacombs metaphor, like it does serve the purpose of like using other people to try to advance himself as he becomes Flanderized. But otherwise, I think we kind of are going to hit on this more as we go.
definitely. And yeah, if anybody doesn't know the episode, I'm just going to give it out for the video itself. Sorry, I did not mean to skip over this. So the episode is season 3, episode 7, the one with the race car bed. So the next episode, then the very last episode I chose was season 9, episode 3, and that is the one with the pediatrician. I just recently discovered this episode because I mean I think that there is an illusion that Paul Rudd coming in is kind of a big point for Phoebe in here, but I never really understood the Joey side of it all until I just revisited this and I was like, holy shit, like Joey is just not a genuine good friend at all. And I think that there are plenty more examples of that, just not being faithful, not making any promises to the friends. It's basically in the title of the show, and he's just not following through with it, which makes the case for Flanderization, I feel. So, how did you guys feel about this episode? We're way we're like a few seasons past now, past season 5. So,
I personally struggle with it a little bit. I appreciate you giving us the explanation now because everything else kind of followed a path. If we were to really nail down the Flanderization of like how they treated him in relation to his career and vice versa, this one being an outlier, like, yeah, it tracks the jerk narrative from the pre Vegas episode, absolutely. But outside of that, I didn't really see a case for Flanderization being made. I think if like that's all he was by this point in the show was just like a fucking asshole for no reason who lies about everything, kind of like a Barney Stinson, it would be a different conversation. But based on the rest of the catacombs that we've delved into thus far, I thought this one is an outlier. I had a little bit of trouble reconciling with the rest.
and that's probably how I view Flanderization, or maybe define it in my own head. Of like he's completely out of the show at this point. Like the title is there, it's friends. He's supposed to be a friend, and yet he's not being written as a good friend or loyal or making meaningful promises. So that's just kind of where I was going with it. And then, but yeah, like I said, there's plenty of other examples of when he's not doing that and he is following that jerk narrative. But I just feel like he's just not a real character anymore. Like he's just almost an alien, if there's a better sense of the word.
So Dakotah actually brings up a really good point with this, and it's the idea. And we've been focusing on Flanderization, and we've been focusing on what Flanderization means to us and the characters. However, I think we've hit our first double Flanderization, folks. Beep, 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 beep. If you really think about it, like the Joey can be broken into two different Flanderizations. You can have Flanderization of Joey being a very goofy, goofball, stupid friend, but a genuine friend that like loves to see his friend's success, and he really goes along that extra mile to make sure everyone's happy and keep the group afloat, while also stumbling and being an idiot along the same time, to then eventually dwindling down into just a manipulating jerk. You right? Or you can say the Flanderization of just being the idiot, the joke, essentially. And I think we've hit that crosshairs where we're getting kind of mixed into both of the Flanderizations right now. So I think we were right on that set of like, oh, they're Flanderizing his career and everything and his character, and being an actor itself. And now we've come into the Flanderization of him not being a friend.
Yeah, I know. I definitely like. I can definitely see where you're coming from, and I think even more to that point, it's like he becomes Flanderized. Like I think what you're trying to say is kind of to Dakotah's initial Catacombs image. It's like there's three tracks of his Flanderization, whereas in our previous episodes and recordings, we've talked about like kind of a one track thing where it's like he becomes a oversexual, like in Barney Stinson's case, an oversexualized ass, and then Ron last week talking about how he's just kind of becomes the manly guy. So I think to that point, yeah, like there are definitely some different tracks for his Flanderization, and I think this episode shows more than anything else is just kind of the romantic side of his Flanderization, where he just becomes continually the like overall caricature of the bachelor who like he's such a bachelor and his calendar is so disorganized he can't even remember like who he's taking out on a date. Like, come on. So I think like that kind of stuff just like that's where I see the Flanderization if anything in this episode. But I do agree with you, Will, that there is like I don't think that this episode necessarily exemplified like his overall Flanderization, but more just that one track.
Right. And I hate to open up a can of worms so late into the record, but I think as we start getting into the territory of double Flanderization, I'm going to start playing the villain of the podcast a little bit and say, I don't know. I don't know how I personally am going to reconcile that, because to this point, I've been looking at Flanderization pretty by the book as the definition of being reduced down to one core characteristic or trait. And I think with Ron and even with Barney, we could have talked a little bit more about other tracks they were going down. But with Joey, there are different avenues at this point in the series, even as the butt of the joke, different routes that they're using his character in different facets. So I think if we're talking about multiple, in my mind, that means we're talking about neither. So I'm going to vote no on Flanderized. Kind of controversial for the first village idiot, but I'm voting no.
Okay.
Oh, let me put on my villain shades.
We're getting
That's great.
somewhere. I'm voting
we hit
no.
Our first trap.
Joey Tribbiani's never had a real job in his life. Put the PowerPoint back over this part. Make it seem like my beautiful, dark, twisted Tribbiani.
So you're saying not Flanderized whatsoever, but are we agreeing to what Dakotah said was that the writers had no idea what to do with him and he's just kind of a jumbled mess?
I agree. for the most
Yeah.
part. And he was the last second pivot for the spinoff, so they didn't really give him any sort of closure by the end of the show because they wanted to do a Ross and Rachel spinoff, didn't go. Monica and Chandler spinoff didn't go. Nobody wanted to do it, so Joey was the last resort, and so they didn't give him, if they were going to give him any sort of closure or long-term growth, they kind of shot themselves in the foot throughout that last season because they didn't know what the future was going to be for him, and it turned out to be disaster.
And I think they almost just killed all the plots, honestly, in season 10 because the two extra credit episodes I mentioned were the episode where they killed the entire Joey and Rachel plot line completely, and season 10, episode 3, where they are starting to date, and then they realized, oh, after 2 or 3 years, we really don't feel like we want to have sex with each other or date, and we're just going to awkwardly end this and just kill this off completely. If there was going to ever be a potential love story, why not follow through with it, even though it was controversial? But maybe we could have just strayed away from the Ross and Rachel plotline. Either way, it's both bad. I just don't like the mashup of friends dating each other, maybe with the exception of Monica and Chandler, but then that's just all who they become. And then I want to bring up season 10, episode 15, which is 2 episodes before the series finale. But I basically think his acting career dies when Estelle dies. And when she's dead, Joey is just this whole, again, he's a whole alien, like believing that she's speaking to him from the dead. And there was another episode like that too, where he feels like he's talking to the paranormal. And I'm like, this is such a weird, even at Joey's most idiocy, it just seems so ridiculous at this point. And they kill those plot lines completely. And at the very last episode, he's basically doing nothing except for hanging out with Chandler for the last time. And there's something with the chicken and the duck too, I think. Do we want to put the stamp of Flanderization onto Joey as a group? Yes or no? How are we feeling about that?
Well, seeing as Will has already said no, I think our stamp is going to be a little faded. Um,
Yeah, let's take a vote.
yeah, I'd be happy to. You know what? I'll go first. So I do think overall Joey is Flanderized, and I do say that um, because I think that multiple characters in the show are Flanderized, and if I would characterize them as Flanderized, I would have to characterize him as Flanderized because I think, oof, oof, I see some disagreement, but like I think like Ross gets a little Flanderized. I think there's Flanderization elsewhere. Um, for me, where I want to leave that though is like the Flanderization that occurs in Joey doesn't ruin the show for me. The Flanderization that happens in other characters is what ruins the show for me. And so I don't think it's bad for the show that he is because there's others that are worse, essentially.
Yeah, I gotta go. I was originally gonna say Flanderized. I like where Will's going with saying not Flanderized. And to double down on that, like, can you really Flanderize or take away any character growth from a character that doesn't have any to begin with or set? And so that's where it really is that gray line of like I feel like he was the epitome of Flanderization from the very beginning. So you can't really Flanderize an already Flanderized character. Um, Maybe I'm wrong there, but I'm gonna stamp it with Flanderized. Yeah.
And I do agree with Will on those points that it could potentially be a no, but in the way that I think about it is that there was always potential in Joey at the very beginning of the series to just try different things with his acting career and probably pull off some successes. I mean, the whole Days of Our Lives plot is considered pretty much a success, and he kind of goes back into it after his character dies, which I do think there was more potential there if he would just kept going and building on that a bit. But they just kind of kill his character off and then pull out the ridiculous audition bits and all that kind of stuff. However, I just always saw potential in those first few seasons, and I think that's why I make the case that he is Flanderized because they completely do nothing with him anymore, and they just kind of leave him sad and lonely.
Yeah, I think Ben made a good point. Everybody has, but Ben said something that kind of changed my viewpoint. Where you can make an argument for all of these characters being Flanderized, but I think it does come down to like what ruins the show for each individual. And Ben hit the nail on the head. For me, that's not Joey. And looking back at it, looking at I can't say any sitcom character who eventually gets a catchphrase isn't Flanderized, so maybe that's the problem I've had as we got to this point. But if we look at him as just the village idiot, if that's the through line of him being Flanderized, I can get on board with that. If we're talking about the Joey doesn't share food Joey, fine. Joey who speaks gibberish is French Joey, fine. And I think there's elements of the stubborn actor and the idiot and all of that wrapped into one, and the jerk even. I'll give it that. I think we can do a full stamp on it. The Catacombs lost me a little bit.
And I would say with the multiple tracks of the Catacombs too, that there could have been potential with him being the jerk overall. But they just don't go that far with it. They just kind of leave. It's basically like a teeter-totter of like, is he going to be this or is he going to be that?
Is it a shoot or is it a ladder?
Yeah. Or a bridge. So Tyler was a maid to Calvin Johnson.
He was a maid to do what?
So like I had a see, he was like signing autographs and things like that and taking photos at our place. So they made me get him like tacos and sweet treats and like you ever had those bubble waffles where they're like a waffle but they're on a stick and they're in the shape of just like they look like anal beads, if we're gonna be real.
What in the iCarly are you talking about right now?
No, that's true. You look it up right now. I swear.
I just told Sally to hit record. I'm not looking up bubble waffles anal beads? Question mark.
You don't have to look at the second part.
That's gonna be Will's green screen.
Please don't. Oh no.
Bubble waffles. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, did that. I had to get him a bunch of water, and I made sure I got him the coldest water because only Calvin Johnson gets the coldest water.
Yeah, only Calvin Johnson gets coldest water.
There's a fridge in that store that doesn't get used 364 days of the year.
Honestly, was not having the diet of what you would think of for a Hall of Famer. You know, I'm gonna be honest there. There were a lot of tacos, a lot of shawarma. There was shawarma, dry. Sorry, shawarma guy, you fucked up. No, look. If you can't get good shawarma, then what are you doing here? Anyway,
where was this?
Truth. I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Mumbai.
Like city. Are we allowed to say city?
Oh yeah, this is down in Detroit, D-town.
Okay. All right, I guess maybe there's a bit more of a shawarma claim to be made there. I thought you were staking the claim, like if you can't get good shawarma, get the fuck out of Mount Pleasant.
Yeah,
you know,
it was in Dearborn. Like, how are you going to be by Dearborn and not have good shawarma?
I thought you were back home. That's
yeah. I mean, there's nothing like good shawarma, you know, when it's summer in the city.
Hot town.
The back of my neck getting dirty and gritty. That's how it felt like. I tell you what, when Calvin Johnson touched me on my shoulder, I think I made a little and they didn't like that one. But it's Calvin Johnson, it's the man, you know. So, but I'm taller than him, so get bent. Yeah, that was my experience. Oh, I did one of these little. I did run a play for him, and it did not go well.
What kind of play? Like a theater play or
no, play? like a running play.
You did a one-man production of Wizard of Oz. Weird choice.
Pulled out the wrong backpack. This isn't my playbook. This is my school book.
Can't just send him a script to Transformers 1, can you?
No, I did a running play, and I did some fake shuffling, and I got out of there real quick, and I ran away, and I grabbed them some hot dogs, and I came back, and I said,
"You're not. Generally, you're supposed to run toward the ball, not away from the ball."
Well, okay, so in this instance, the ball was the tacos, and I had to go get the tacos to give to Mr. Johnson.
You elected to pretend to run a play while you went and got him food?
I think he kind of did what he thought was a play, and Calvin Johnson, who I might add, is probably pretty hungry at this point. He's just like, "You're killing it, man. You're killing it."
But yeah, I was like, "Calvin, you're my favorite NBA player." And like, there was another guy there with him too. I forget.
For those of you here for the sitcoms, Calvin Johnson is a famous NFL star for the Detroit Lions. If you don't know that he's not an NBA player,
so like, he knew going in, like, we were gonna be best friends. Like, I had a feeling.
You do Conan's podcast after?
No, but I am available, Conan. So,
well, if you need someone to do whatever exactly it was that Tyler did, Conan, this is your guy. If you need a fourth assistant,
I can run and get you sandwiches whenever you'd like.
Oh, we're adding sandwiches to the mix now. I've heard tacos and hot dogs. This is the first time sandwiches.
Shawarma.
Shawarma.
The shawarma sandwiches.
We're tracted.
Yeah, but for Conan, instead of running a play before he goes and gets him a sandwich, he does like a 1-minute monologue. It's just very uncomfortable.
So thanks for joining us, everybody, on the Flanderization Files episode 2, talking about Joey Tribbiani. I think we had a pretty good discussion there, discussing his Flanderization, and I think we all agreed, especially after being in hypersleep for so long, we all agreed that Joey is in Flanderization. And yeah. So my name is Dakotah. Thank you so much for watching. I have these 3 lovely gentlemen here who have also brought things to the discussion and went through my crazy.
This was mostly about me. But
also those guys who talked in the background.
So it was me. I just wanted to say thanks so much for the things that I brought to the table as a host and producer. And now 3 motherfuckers who weren't even in the Catacombs.
Roll the credits, and it's all just Dakotah.
Are the credits going to be as small of a font as the other stuff?
Featuring Dakotah.
Yeah, he's going to have to walk us through them.
Hey, when did this show get produced by Salazar Studios?
So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Next week, we have a very, very special episode on... actually, let's bring it over to Tyler to discuss what the next episode will be of the Flanderization Files.
Dakotah in post, you better give me a drum roll for this, baby. We're going to go with King of Queens.
I thought you were going to say Looney Tunes.
I'm not putting my name in the credits.
Hey, I'm not going to give you a room tone for a drum roll. How about you do it over my barking dog sound instead?
We're gonna go with Carrie. Carrie Heffernan from King of Queens. That is going to be our next episode. We're going to talk about the rise and fall of the Queen of King of Queens. Thank you.
The city?
Well, I am so looking forward to that, Tyler. Anyways, thanks you guys for so much for watching the episode again. Everybody go around and say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.